In the mesmerizing world of ancient Rome, marriage was anything but romantic. Forget candlelit dinners or vows of eternal love back then. Getting married was more like signing a contract or sealing a political alliance. It wasn't about finding a soulmate, it was about strengthening family power, securing wealth, and climbing the social ladder. Surprisingly, it was not only normal but expected for Roman husbands to be unfaithful. Affairs weren't hidden in shame, they were an open secret. Many men casually saw courtesans or even had long-term mistresses outside their marriage, and no one batted an eye. But that's just the beginning. Roman men also had romantic and sexual relationships with other men, and this too was seen as entirely normal. To really grasp how the Romans thought about love and desire, we have to forget everything we know about modern relationships. In ancient Rome, marriage, power, and pleasure were deeply intertwined. Romans didn't label themselves as gay, straight, or bisexual the way we do now. What mattered wasn't who you were with, but who held the power. In a typical relationship between a man and a woman, the man was seen as the dominant, the giver, the woman the receiver. These weren't just sexual roles, they reflected a person's status and authority. When two men were involved, things became more complicated. One of them had to take on the submissive role seen as feminine and weaker. That could be socially damaging for an adult male unless he was still a teenager. In fact, one of the most common types of same-sex relationships in Rome was known as pederasty, a bond between an older man, the Erastes, and a teenage boy, the Eromenos. But these weren't purely romantic. They often included mentorship, guidance, and social grooming. Among the Roman elite, such relationships were not scandalous. They were seen as part of a young man's path into adulthood, offering connections to politics and influence. Even Rome's most powerful leaders, emperors, generals, politicians, had male and female lovers. And that wasn't seen as cheating, not in the way we understand the term today. Birth control didn't exist, and childbirth was extremely dangerous for women. So same-sex affairs were in a way a practical method of birth control, helping men avoid putting their wives at risk. In these relationships, the dominant partner, often someone powerful like an emperor, was expected to take the masculine role, reinforcing his authority. But Roman society didn't always follow its own rules. Take Julius Caesar, for instance. One of the most iconic figures in Roman history, Caesar was rumored to prefer the submissive role in same-sex relationships. That shocked many and sparked endless gossip because it clashed with the image of the strong, commanding ruler he was supposed to be. Then there was Emperor Hadrian, different from most. Though married to a woman for political reasons, historians believe the marriage was entirely physical-less. Both Hadrian and his wife had their own lovers, and Hadrian gave his heart to a teenage boy named Antinous. The boy was not just beautiful, he was bright, cultured, and deeply adored by the emperor. They traveled the empire together, and Hadrian made sure Antinous received the best education. But their bond ended in tragedy. While in Egypt, Antinous drowned mysteriously in the Nile River. Heartbroken beyond measure, Hadrian honored him in extraordinary ways. He built an entire city near the site of his death and named it after him. He had Antinous's body mummified and returned to Rome. He minted coins bearing his face. He even declared Antinous a god, an incredibly rare honor, and worship of him spread across the empire. Hadrian wasn't alone in his unusual loves. Emperor Nero's behavior made even Romans raise their eyebrows. While most emperors kept male lovers among palace slaves and treated them as inferiors, Nero went further. He held full-scale wedding ceremonies. In one, he married a former male slave named Pythagoras, with Nero himself wearing the bridal veil playing the role of the bride. Later, to satisfy public expectations, Nero married another young male slave, Sporus, but took on the masculine role this time. Even emperors had to manage how they appeared in public. Yet Nero's actions didn't stop there. In a deeply disturbing move meant to assert his dominance, he had Sporus castrated so there would be no ambiguity in their relationship. It was a cruel and calculated attempt to control both perception and person. Other rumors suggest Nero was abusive, manipulative, and even incestuous, with some sources claiming he had a sexual relationship with his mother Agrippina the Younger. This allegation, most famously stated by Suetonius and echoed cautiously by Tacitus, is widely dismissed today as slander, an extreme but effective way Roman political rivals destroyed reputations. Nothing was more scandalous than incest, and it was often used as a weapon long after a ruler's death. And still as shocking as Nero was, one emperor is remembered even more darkly, Tiberius. Tiberius, known for his intelligence and paranoia, descended into dark depths of depravity in his later years. He isolated himself on the island of Capri, far from Rome's eyes, and surrounded himself with luxury and boys. Officially, they were servants. Unofficially, many were believed to be exploited for his sexual desires. Roman historians who already hated Tiberius painted him as a monster, reporting disturbing details of abuse and corruption. While some of these stories are likely exaggerated, they paint a picture of unchecked power. And even if only partially true, they reveal how dangerously corrupted emperors could become in the absence of limits. The world of ancient Rome, when it came to love, sex, and marriage, was full of contradictions. Pleasure was power, gender was performance, and reputation was everything. To truly understand how the Romans lived and loved, we have to shed our modern assumptions and step into a world where alliances mattered more than affection, where identity bent to power, and where even the most shocking acts could become the norm, so long as you were the one in control. So what does all this tell us about ancient Rome? It wasn't just an empire of conquest, marble statues, and grand forums. It was a place where love, power, identity, and control collided in ways that challenge everything we think we know. Behind the togas and temples were real people, complicated, flawed, and driven by forces we still recognize today: ambition, desire, vulnerability, and the need to be seen. Their stories are raw, messy, sometimes inspiring, often disturbing, but above all, human. If there's one lesson to take from Rome's tangled web of love and politics, it's this: power without boundaries can twist even the most personal relationships. And when social rules are built not on fairness, but on dominance and image, love becomes a tool, not a truth. Today, we live in a world that still struggles with power, identity, and equality. But by looking back honestly at how the most powerful people once loved, ruled, and fell, we gain something priceless: perspective. Because to move forward with empathy and wisdom, we must first understand where we've come from, even if that truth makes us uncomfortable.